Spirit of the East, Spirit of air, of morning and springtime, be with us as the sun rises in times of beginning, in times of planting. Inspire us with the fresh breath of courage as we go forth into new adventures.
Spirit of the South, Spirit of fire, of noontime and summer, be with us through the heat of the day and help us to be ever growing. Warm us with strength and energy for the work that awaits us.
Spirit of the West, Spirit of water, of evening and autumn, be with us as the sun sets and help us to enjoy a rich harvest. Flow through us with a cooling, healing quietness and bring us peace.
Spirit of the North, Spirit of earth, of nighttime and winter, be with us in the darkness in the time of gestation. Ground us in the wisdom of the changing seasons as we celebrate the spiraling journey of our lives.
Samhain means summer's end, a celebration of the end of harvest and the start of the coldest half of the year. Ancient Celts celebrated Samhain to honor the ancestors who came before. The old year had passed, the harvest had been gathered, and leaves are falling from the trees. The earth slowly begins to die around us. The ancient Celts believed that at Samhain, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred, and that fairies and ghosts could freely return to earth. For those who have lost loved ones in the past year, Samhain can be a time to bring closure to grieving, or at least to recognize the grieving. However, it's also a way to appreciate life. It's celebrated sometimes by preparing a harvest dinner, and that holiday meal is meant to be shared with those who have passed on, as well as those who are still with us. And places may be set for beloved family members who have passed away. During the 7th century, the Catholic Church established All Saints' Day on November 1st to remember the saints and martyrs. It was followed by All Souls' Day on November 2nd to commemorate those faithful who had died. The Mass, which was said on All Saints, was called All Hallows Mass, the Mass of those who are hallowed or sacred. The night before it became known as All Hallows Eve, and eventually morphed into what we call Halloween. A different type of fairies and ghosts roam our neighborhood today seeking candy. The Day of the Dead combines the ancient Aztec month-long custom of celebrating ancestors with All Souls' Day, a holiday that the Spanish colonizers brought to Mexico. The holiday, which is celebrated by some Latinos on November 1st and 2nd, is like a family reunion, except dead ancestors are the guests of honor. When Reverend Lidio Cuervo was a minister at First Parish, she shared this wonderful celebration with us, including a live band. First Parish members enthusiastically embraced this tradition for several years. Our ritual today will be a little simpler, but we hope you will find it as meaningful. I didn't grow up celebrating Samhain. A good Catholic girl, I went to Mass on All Souls and said prayers for the elderly family members who had died. When I began following a pagan path about 20 years ago, Samhain wasn't initially a holiday that really meant much to me. Probably a little too much Halloween and negative images of witches. But over time, the end of harvest and preparing for winter began to connect with me on a more spiritual level. When First Parish did celebrate the Day of the Dead, I was comforted by the community practice of recognizing the dead, celebrating their lives, and honoring grief. The connection to those who passed away as an annual ritual grew in importance to me during COVID, when suddenly the list of people who I knew who died grew rapidly. I also felt a connection to those I didn't know personally, healthcare workers and first responders who died of COVID, patients in nursing homes and group settings who died of COVID. Working at the State Department of Public Health, the daily reports of death and loss was overwhelming at times. In addition to COVID, there was an increase statistically in what is called death by despair, suicide, and drug overdoses. Those numbers becoming very real to me when my cousin's son died of a drug overdose last year, and this summer when a young colleague committed suicide. For me, organizing this ritual last year, and now this year, is a way to recognize those losses personally and in community, and to heal. I hope this simple ritual today will bring healing to those of you who need it. In a moment, we will begin the ritual. We will do it this year in 2 parts. The first part will be to honor people who were members of First Parish who passed away since February of 2020. Chris McElroy will read those names, and then we will invite anybody who has a remembrance, a photograph or other item, to bring it up and put it on the round table. If you would like to acknowledge somebody and didn't bring an item, you are welcome to take a flower and put that on the table. After we complete that part of the ritual, we will then open it up for a second part in which we will have general remembrances for other people who are important to those here today. So with that, we will begin. We begin by lighting these candles to remember our ancestors and those who have passed on from this life, our chosen family, our spiritual companions, our friends, our acquaintances. And Chris will read the names of people at First Parish who passed away since February of 2020.
Richard Gonsi, Barbara Ciccone, Thomas Michelson, Frank Duhay, Sheila Rice, Dan Bartley, Lisa Bailey, John Moss, Joel Baer, and Leslie Phillips.
Richard Gonsi was an immensely creative person in the realms of theater, film, television, public service, and writing. He was the husband of our fellow congregant, Joanna Fink.
Barbara Ciccone was a person who overcame many obstacles to live independently and create a meaningful business. She took a very active role in educating First Parish on issues of accessibility.
Thomas Michelson was our beloved senior minister from 1989 to 2006, and tremendously accomplished in many ways, including authoring of one of our favorite hymns, Wake Now My Senses. He was the husband of our fellow congregant, Patricia Shepard.
Frank Duhay was a very active and eloquent leader at First Parish, chairing many committees as well as the governing board. As a former mayor of Cambridge and major contributor at Phillips Brooks House at Harvard, he enhanced our relationship with Harvard and the city.
Sheila Rice was a devoted, long-term member of First Parish. She was an accomplished artist and teacher at the Cambridge Center for Adult Education.
Lisa Bailey was a member of the People of Color Caucus at First Parish. She bravely fought terminal cancer as she pursued her studies with plans to enroll in graduate school.
Dan Bartley was a longtime member of our church who was the devoted husband and fellow traveler with Helen Glickman, who passed away in 2018.
John Moss was a very knowledgeable lawyer who actively participated in the Finance Committee and major congregational discussions at First Parish.
Joel Baer was a UU minister, psychotherapist, and a Buddhist meditation teacher who ran a Buddhist practice group at First Parish for many years.
Leslie Phillips was an activist and lawyer who was the first openly transgendered person to be ordained a UU minister, and she was ordained here at First Parish 35 years ago. She was one of the founders of the Cakes for the Queen of Heaven at First Parish, which grew into the Women's Sacred Circle.
Recognizing that some people may be holding names that they didn't want to come forward, we'll place one more flower on the altar to recognize others that we are holding in our hearts.
Blessed be the memories of our ancestors, family, and friends, those of blood and those of choice. As the wheel turns, we honor those who came before us. With the gift of remembrance, we remember all of you. You are dead, but not forgotten, and you live within us and within those who are yet to come. We are grateful for your lives and grateful for our memories. We also take this moment to remember we are the ancestors of the future. Our generosity, acts of love and kindness will be remembered by those who come after us. Blessed be.